Hi Lorraine, well thank you for breaking the time to chat. Why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you for inviting me, Simon. Yes, happy to tell you a little bit about myself. So, as you know, my name's Lorraine. I've been coming to Kerith for almost 9 years now. I'm married to David and we have 5 daughters between us. So very female environment we live in. But our daughters are adult now and left home. And we have some grandchildren too. And I know it's 9 years I've been coming here because one of my granddaughters was born just before we started coming.
Oh, brilliant.
So yes, that's a little bit about me. We live in Bracknell and thoroughly enjoy being part of the Kerith community.
Well, fantastic. Well, we love having you as part of the community. And I think what lots of people wouldn't realise is that you've been really involved in our Creation Care series, and particularly around the creation of all the small group materials and all the brilliant online stuff we've had. I've been leading a small group. It's just been brilliant. Every week I go to that week and see which video I can show and some great ideas around how to lead my small group and what to do with them. And so I know you're very passionate about the whole issue of creation care. How did you first get into it? What first?
Well, I've worked in sustainability for a long time. I initially, when I went to uni, I studied sociology actually, but as part of that, some of the modules were linked to environmental and social justice, and that sort of was an interest of mine. At school, actually, going back many years, one of my English teachers was Sir Jonathan Porritt, and he left teaching. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he left teaching. And sort of was very involved in green politics, etc. And he's a fantastic thought leader. Still writes a lot of books and is very involved in all areas to do with sustainability. So I think he'd sparked an interest in the background. And then I worked for many years in a variety of non-profits and also then large global corporates working for different areas to do with sustainability, but finally really settling in the world of electronics and how we can be more sustainable in our use of electronics and reuse of electronics to reduce waste. Because the global impact of electronic waste is quite devastating, as you'll probably be aware. So having worked with a variety of schemes that looked at how we could reuse more globally and think more responsibly about electronic use, because technology is wonderful, isn't it? It helps support us go to more sustainable solutions, particularly with AI, etc. However, the hardware has a big impact, and that's not just in terms of the energy, but also in terms of the raw material extraction, the whole supply chain and the product life cycle. So my most recent post has been with Microsoft, working with the global data center teams to reduce the impact of the energy, but also, as I mentioned before, more importantly, the whole of the supply chain. So how we can extract less, use less, have less waste, use more water, and work with the supply chains linked to that. So a lot going on in that space, and Microsoft, like many other large corporates, are doing some great things to create some ambitious targets around net zero and net waste, zero waste, and reducing water. So been involved in lots of little bits of those areas and had a lot of exposure to that.
That's fascinating. So you've really seen the corporate world and how businesses responded to this. Now, my observation would be often businesses being ahead of the church in this whole area, hasn't it, in terms of considering its impact?
Yes, there's a lot gone on in businesses as well that's behind the scenes. So through my Creation Care group, some people were not aware of some of the things businesses are doing. So I did sort of suggest to everybody, always have a look. If there's a product you buy regularly, or a supplier you're buying your energy from, or whoever you like buying your clothes from, have a look at their websites and see what they're doing, because you might be surprised and see a lot of them are doing a lot more, or you might be surprised and find they're not doing what you would like, and you might want to switch your allegiance to somebody else. And businesses are also very heavily involved in conversations with government. And so, I was part of a group called Tech UK, so a lot of lobbying with government when there's new policies and things coming out, but less of a link with businesses and church and what church are doing. So I think that was one of the things that really led me to talk to you initially, because I was feeling a disconnect of being busy in my life, doing things that I felt were good for the planet. And I felt that was where God wanted me to go. But at the same time, Jesus wasn't at the centre of that work that I'm doing in my daily work.
Yeah.
And then coming to church and worshipping, but there wasn't at that point a stronger focus on us being stewards of the planet and how we respond as Christians to the global climate crisis.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you think back to Genesis and the command that was given to Adam and Eve to take care of the planet, and yet we as Christians seem to have been way behind the curve in engaging with this. It's been a sort of green issue, and in some sense I suppose we've been a bit hands off with that because it's sometimes felt a bit new agey, or we don't quite know what to do.
Yes.
I'm just pleased that we've begun to redress the balance, really.
I know, it's exciting, and I think it's interesting how God works in these ways, because as I said to you, I'd been praying about this personal dilemma for some time, and then when I initially spoke to Katrina, she explained, well, actually we did want to look at this 18 months ago, but because of the pandemic we've had to postpone it, and it's coming together. But now we've really started looking at it as a church, and through the course we can see that the Bible's full of scripture that's calling us to look after the planet.
Yeah.
And when we start looking at it from that perspective and focus on it, I think it's great to see that some of the views and perspectives are growing and changing, and hopefully, I know that some people do see it as a bit of a radical, or that we're all eco warriors and gluing ourselves to pavements, or closing down the M25. That actually there's a lot more to it than that, and we don't have to act in sort of violently radical
So if you're not
ways.
gluing yourself to the M25, how are you personally? Because obviously, corporately in terms of your work life, you've worked out a lot of this stuff. What does it look like for you on a personal level?
So on a personal level, it's been really a journey of taking lots of small steps. So it's been a very long time since I've eaten meat, and that again was a gradual process of gradually reducing my meat intake, so now living on a plant-based diet, and buying more organic foods, and looking a lot in our house at food waste and how we can reduce that, having our own home composting, and looking at just regularly, okay, so we've kind of ticked that box and we can do that a bit better, but what other things can we do? So trying to really change consumption habits, not just with our diet, but looking at how we can buy less, refuse more, think a lot more about, do I really need this, and can I buy something secondhand, and how can I repair? My husband is very big into repairing, so looking at how many more things we can repair at home rather than replace. He's much better at that than I am. I have to say, and I'm very fortunate that he can do those things, but so many times we can repair things rather than buy new things, so those are other things that we do. Experimenting at the moment with making our own cleaning products.
Wow.
At home, which some are successful and some aren't, trying to have something that cleans grease off better than common detergents, even some of the eco products that's hard to find replacements for. And also making things smell nice is something
it's a bit of a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, so vinegar's a good product, and recently I was cleaning my bath with something that I thought now smelled lovely, having added fruit skins and all sorts to it. And my granddaughter said, "Oh, this smells really nice." I said, "Oh, good, I'm glad you like it. I made this myself." And she said, "I love the smell of vinegar." So
it's a journey of discovery.
It's a journey of discovery, and those are the small things, but it's also the bigger things. And I think you talked about yesterday, looking at switching providers for energy, longer term plans to move to an electric car. There's lots and lots of things that, we can do. Putting out buckets to save the rainwater, and so it's constantly changing, and sharing habits amongst the family as well. So always talking about what we can do, planning a sort of plastic-free Christmas, and thinking about options of what can you buy instead of buying somebody that gift. Can you buy them maybe a National Trust pass for something, or plant a tree in celebration of somebody's birthday, buy a bush for the garden.
It's good.
Those are all the things. Could go on for a long time.
So let me give you a chance. We're here in the Revive House, which is all about helping people, who are in a tough place, and often that's materially, people are struggling with poverty. And some of these things are more expensive, I've noticed. You start doing, you buy the eco cleaning products or organic food, and it costs more. What would you say to somebody? And obviously we're seeing, heating costs go up, and people are just struggling to survive, and put food on the table for themselves and heat their homes. What would you say to someone who's in that situation?
I would say, again, it comes back to the small steps, and if you could perhaps make changes in one area that can often save a little bit of money, that can maybe allow you to go up in the budget in one area, is one way of looking at it. So maybe buying a more eco-friendly cleaning product, but then if you're buying less meat, you probably saved a little bit on the... So it's looking at how you can balance the books. Some of the investments will save money in the longer term. So again, with some of the fuel changes, looking at ways you can insulate your home more as well will actually probably save on the bills. And that can be small things, even draft excluders under doors, and putting tea towels under the door, wearing more jumpers and clothes rather than jumping to put the heating on as often as you can. So there are often some trade-offs if you think carefully about it, and look at advice for that online. There are some good ways that you can, as I say, make some trade-offs across those things. Sharing things as well is another great way of doing things. Buying from charity shops as well. So there are, absolutely, you're right, that some of these things require some investment or spending a bit more, but there's usually a trade-off and other ways of doing things. And I think buying second-hand is another
that's some great ideas
way.
there.
And with Food Bank, I mean, I know I've got ideas, loads of ideas, but with Food Bank, I thought we could start creating some recipe cards and menu ideas and show people how to make more of the food they've got as well, make it last a bit longer and have less waste, and that all comes down to saving money too.
Excellent. Very good. Hey, anything you'd like to ask me?
Well, there are lots of things I'd like to ask you first.
Okay.
So first of all, I was going to ask you, I know you're running a course for creation care, and I'd love some feedback about it. To how's it gone, the good, and also the more challenging, if there've been challenging areas, because we want to know how we can improve it, and also people's views that have come along that might have been challenging along the way.
Yeah, I mean, my small group's been brilliant. I've got a lovely group of people. We meet on Zoom every week, and we've just been challenging one another really and discussing what we're doing. I think some people certainly feel slightly overwhelmed by the whole thing, of like the enormity of it.
Yes.
And, I think that sense of, is what I'm going to do really going to make a difference? China's still building coal-fired power stations, and whatever's going on around the world, is my, buying a different detergent really going to change things? But I think we've gradually come to the realization we just have to do what we can do. That's what God calls us to do, is not really worry too much about everyone else, but really focus on the things that we can control, and the things that, and actually if we make those changes, then, God will step in and do what he can do. I think also that understanding that this is a justice issue, I think that's been big for a lot of people. It's not just about the climate, but actually the changing climate already is impacting the lives of some of the poorest and most vulnerable people around the world. And actually, even if we don't do it, because the temperatures are going up, we need to do it because actually this is about people. And as followers of Christ, justice is part of who we are. It's part of God's makeup, and so part of ours. And I think that's been a helpful link for a lot of people to make. Had some people challenge me around what we're doing. Why are we talking so much around this and not talking about Jesus and evangelism and healing and, the things that, perhaps traditionally we've talked a lot about. So that's been interesting to, just talk through.
Yes.
I mean, some people even challenge some of the theology that we've presented. And I just want to say, I'm really up for those conversations. I think I'm very aware that what we're doing now is not the finished word on Kerith's view on all this. We're all very new to this. I know you've thought about it longer than people like me have, but particularly how we preach our way into this, how we really see this stuff in the scriptures, I think is a whole new ball game. So I just want to encourage people, if they've got those questions, to wrestle with them, and not to be afraid to ask the questions, not to be afraid to come and talk to me or others if we think, I don't quite understand that, or that doesn't really seem to be what that verse is saying, or where do we get this from. I think as a community we need to wrestle with that.
Yes, I would agree, and I think that's been one of the nice things in my group too. We've had some of that type of discussion as well, but I think it does come down to that. We talk at Kerith about loving God and loving the people, and we can't do that without caring for creation, because as you say, the climate crisis is a human crisis, isn't it? And I know we've also talked about earlier this year Black Lives Matter and white privilege, but we're also white privilege and climate privilege are very closely linked, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I'm really pleased some of those issues have already come up and discussions in your group. So
That's been very good.
That's really nice. And I'm also wanting to know how you see this panning out going forward, because it's great at the moment. This is kind of a hot topic one way or another, but we have to be sustainable about our sustainability course. So how do you see that going forward, Simon?
Well, I think I'm always passionate that when we do something we follow it through. So I know I spoke to a lot of church leaders when George Floyd died. They've told me, that for a couple of weeks they were talking about race on Sundays, but really since then they've done nothing. And I just don't want us to be like that. I want us, when we feel like there's an issue that God's raising for us, we follow through on it. So, around the race thing, we've now got Sherry Barrett, who's now leading a group within Kerith to really drive that forward and make sure that that's on the front burner. And I think for me, we'll do a similar thing around the creation care is, as leaders, we have to think about all sorts of different things, but I think we need a dedicated group within the church who are meeting and connecting and working with us as leadership to go, okay, on a corporate level, how do we move this forward? So what are we doing around our buildings, around, as we remodel Farnborough and we redevelop Windsor and we think of updating Bracknell and seeing what we do in West Wight, how are we moving towards being carbon neutral as a church community in everything that we do? Just spotting the washing up liquid here and thinking, okay, we probably need a different washing up liquid. And a group that's really going to help us think those things through and just spot some of those things. Whether we engage with an organisation like Church, who would give us an almost like a rating of where we're at and where we could get to. I think those things could be really helpful. But I think that group also to continue to help us on a personal level, just to keep reminding us, hey, we need to keep taking personal responsibility for this, whether it's the choices that we're making, whether it's contacting our MP at key moments, what are those things that we can be doing as individuals as well. So, I think that's one thing that we will look to come off the back of this. And then my hope would be, at various points, we talk about it again as an issue. It gets built into everything we talk about. And this is now just something that's part of the ethos of Kerith. This is part of who we are. Partly doing an 8-week series. I'm like, oh my goodness, at one level, this is quite a long series to do around one issue. But I think having not talked about it at all for the 32 years I've been in Kerith, is almost needed that to raise it enough that we're going to carry on with it and have it embedded as an issue that we are serious about and we are wanting to make progress on. So that'd be my hope, on a sort of not almost like a corporate level, we keep it, but also on a personal level. I continue being challenged of the choices I'm making and what I need to be doing differently.
That's exciting. And I think one of the things I'm really hopeful for is that where we've kind of lit this fire in people's hearts, that people will feel confident they can come forward with those questions, but also with offers of help to be
absolutely.
part of that group. I know that we've got a link on the website for people to send forward questions or offers of help. So it would be lovely if we can really sort of fulfill that ambition and draw together a group, and not just people who are experts in sustainability. I've got experience, but I'm certainly not an expert. But I think there'd be a variety of different skills and gifts that people have that they can use as part of this project. And I know something for me, as I've been working on this project, by using the experience I have, along with a team. Obviously it wasn't just me, But doing that for this purpose, doing this for this good, it really does make you feel closer to God as well. I felt so much more connected to God over the last few months, and so I'd really like to encourage people to come forward, and if they can just do one thing, or they might not be able to do something but have a great suggestion they can put on the table for others to follow, that would be really exciting.
Yeah, and I think it's been encouraging for me, probably for every person who's come and said, I'm not sure we ought to be talking about this. There have been 3 or 4 people who've come and gone, you know, oh, my kids are really engaging because this is a big issue for them, or, you know, someone's telling me they can really talk about church at work now because church is involved in this, and this is an issue that they can talk about. And so I think, you know, some people haven't got it, but an awful lot of people have. And I go, you know, the fact that we're engaged with this as a church just helps a whole load of people who maybe weren't sure about church go, oh yeah, it is involved in things that I'm passionate about.
Yes, yeah.
So that's really exciting.
It is, that's very exciting. And I think the other part of that as well is it does give us the opportunity to talk, as you mentioned before, in our spheres about our faith and how it connects to everyday issues. And people in our workplaces or our other areas will either pick up something about faith and have more interest in that, or if not, they might just be more sustainable in their lifestyle as well and do something. So there's only good to come from those conversations, and I think we've all got an opportunity here to, you know, exercise our discipleship more widely through this topic.
Yeah, I think that strong sense, you know, Jesus is the core of who we are. Jesus is the core of what we're about. But part of following Jesus is taking an interest in creation care. It's not separate to it. It is a part of what it means to be a follower of Christ. Absolutely. And it's not everything. And, you know, we're not going to talk about it every week, but it is a component, and we want to, focus on that. And I think just one final exciting thing for me is that other churches have been picking up on what we've been doing. I know when we spoke to Tiff, they were saying we're the first larger church that has ever done in their experience, has done a series of more than a week on this issue. And I know other churches have been looking at our small group materials, and I'm just really excited for that opportunity to influence the wider church. And thank you for playing your part in helping us to do that.
No, I've really enjoyed it, and I'm really very happy to help support taking it further outside Kerith if there's ways that I can help to do that, because, you know, that would really fulfill one of my ambitions, that we can really take this forward. There's an awful lot of people out here, and Christians and non-Christians, that can make a big impact. So when we all think about the little things we can do, those materials give lots of ideas in terms of prayers, action and giving. So it'd be great to share that. So in summary, each of us think individually about what we can do, and then if people are interested in getting involved in the core group, then contact us, and you'd love to hear from those people and include them in your gang. Yes, definitely. That's great. Well, thank you so much for making the time. I'm just really grateful again for all that you've done, and continue to push us forward as a community. Definitely. And encourage engagers in this area. Yeah, that's great. Thanks a lot.